Oftentimes, insurance agents feel trapped inside of their agency, and that is why we started the 10-hour agency challenge. Today is the last day. It is day 5. I hope you have checked out the prior videos. If you haven't, go give them a watch. Day 1, I teach about systems and processes to have inside of your agency. Day 2, Patrick and I taught about how to scrape loan officers, how to reach out to them to book appointments, and then how to convert every single lender you talk to actually send you the business. Day 3, Patrick taught about how he provides massive value to all of his referral partners and why they all love him. Day 4, Brandon taught about his talk path and how his team has such a massive closing ratio. And today, in day 5, Patrick is teaching some more NEPQ tips, and he's teaching about the psychology of sales and how his team is able to convert more sales by selling logically and emotionally, how they compare or combine the two to have a massive amount of success. So I hope you enjoy the video. We would love to have you join our Facebook group. It is completely free. There's a link down below to join Agency Shop Talk. We will see you in the next one.
Well, first and foremost, guys, thanks so much for being here. Tyler, thank you for putting this on. This has been, I think, a great experience. I've heard nothing but great things from everybody that's been attending. A lot of offline conversations, just kind of talking about like, where does this go? What's the path? What comes next? And so real briefly, I think Tyler created a secondary group. So if you have employees, if you have agents, people that are not agency owners, we are going to be able to open up a group so that way they can also learn, but they don't also necessarily need to have the same conversations and learn the same things that you guys as agency owners are. But, you know, there'll be things like sales training, opportunities of how to network, how to connect, if they're allowed to do so. If not, how do they get better? How do they get more proficient at their current roles? Right. So we'll kind of be deep diving a lot more into that for agents who just want to learn, but also maybe don't have the same pain points that you do as an agency owner. Okay. So I'm going to really talk about two different aspects that kind of go hand in hand today. The first one that we're going to be talking about really is what is it and how many people are truly afraid of sales, right? And it's not so much that I think people are afraid of sales. They're just regurgitating everything that they've heard. And this happens very often. Okay. So I'll give you an example of how this works. And this is, you're going to kind of notice this a lot. But if I were to go see, or if I watch like the new It series, right? I think it's called Garyville, right? A lot of people are talking about this. And somebody's like, oh, I'm not really an It fan, but I like this show. Okay. And then the next person was talking about, they're like, yeah, I heard really good things about that show. Even people who don't really like the It movies actually like this, right? And then if somebody goes, well, is it scary? And then they're like, they have to formulate an opinion. And for most people, they don't want to say that they don't know. So what do they say? Yeah, it was pretty scary. I heard it was pretty scary, right? A lot of times they formulate an opinion of something that they assume, but they don't actually know the answer, or the answer has been regurgitated from somebody else. So the next time they tell somebody, oh, you need to watch this, I heard it's pretty scary, right? And it's like that old telephone game when you whisper in somebody's ear, and by the time it gets to the last person, it's not necessarily the same as what it once was, okay? The same concept when it comes to us delivering on sales is the same exact way, okay? How many here actively cold call? Okay. Liam, okay. How many of you do not cold call because you think that you hate cold calling? Okay. Right? That's fair. Now, if you were to actually calculate or write down how many cold calls you've had that have actually failed, do you think that you would be in the thousands? Or do you think that if you look at it, that you'd probably have less than 50, maybe even less than 15 calls that you actually got rejected on?
Maybe thousands over all the years I've been doing it. If we took a period of time more recently, I'd agree it's not as many as I.
Okay. Now, if I reset the parameters just slightly and I turned around and said, if you don't count voicemails and if you don't count people who hang up on you, right? And I'm talking about true rejection, where you've actually got a chance to speak with them, had conversation, and then they declined you, would that number go down significantly less?
Yes.
Okay. And so the idea really is that we only hate the concept of cold calling because we've been regurgitated and heard that over and over and over again. Okay. Today, I'm going to teach you what we call a psychological loop, specifically a confidence loop. Anybody ever heard of the book Think and Grow Rich? Napoleon Hill? Okay. Probably my all-time favorite book and was really life transforming for me. Okay. Now, many of you guys probably heard of another guy, super famous, big influencer by the name of Russell Brunson. Okay. Russell Brunson bought all of these trainings and unpublished things from Napoleon Hill, the author of Think and Grow Rich, $2.7 million, because they were owned by a private owner. They were not owned by the family. They were not owned by the Think and Grow Rich Academy. They were not owned by the Napoleon Hill Academy. A private owner who basically had those passed on, kept them, and then basically made almost $3 million off of these. Okay. Russell Brunson paid for these and then re-released them, and now has exclusive rights to work directly and publish these with the Napoleon Hill Academy. One of these books is called Where It Will Place You Amongst Men. Okay, it's a really short read, but it was a workbook that Russell first initially only offered if you went through his training. One of the simple concepts of the first confidence, one of the first pillars that he introduced is something called a confidence loop. So before we get to the loop, we need to talk about something called a dominating thought. Okay, and we've all dealt with imposter syndrome before, but a dominating thought is really just kind of an idea that you have in your head. And oftentimes that idea then leads to action. The action then leads to your thought process and everything that you're sharing, right? And so how many of us have always talked about imposter syndrome, but how many of us have ever wrestled with the idea that this is a great idea, this is a bad idea? Okay. And so in your dominating thoughts, there is room for both faith and fear. And to me, this was a really interesting concept because a lot of times I don't know why I hang on to something or an idea. A lot of times I think about that and I'm like, this is really good. I just don't know if I'm the one to execute. I just don't know. Right. And how many of you guys have ever heard of kind of these people who have gone off the deep end? Right. All of a sudden they don't like something. All of a sudden they're changing their habits and they're like, you changed. Well, what happens is you take this dominant thought and you keep feeding it because it continuously pops up in your mind. So therefore, then you take action. And so the idea with this confidence loop is that with your dominating thoughts, you have to learn how to control it. The dominating thoughts that are in your head, again, there's room for faith and fear. So the idea is, does this take over and I become so used to talking about this and discussing it, and then I execute on it? Or does this become a hindrance because I'm not executing and doing that, but I'm still discussing it, so it's still lingering? Okay. So when you understand that what is your current dominant thoughts, for me, I always go to a mind map. Okay. A mind map is, you can pull that up, super simple on Google. It's really cool. Like you can immediately see different personality types. If you're someone who likes color coding, you're somebody who likes very detailed structures. People do it on a computer. Some people write it out. Some people actually make a brain out of it. It's really cool to see. But take this idea of whatever it is that your dominant thought is, and you start to draw different stems off of it. Why is this a good idea? Why is this a bad idea? How can I execute? Okay. And I go back to this simple process for everything, whether it's marketing, whether it's branding, whether I have an idea, how do I generate more sales? It's super simple. But the crazy part is most people, when you go through a mind map, you realize that innately you have a lot of the answers deep within you. You already know what to do. Okay. But if you want additional ideas, right? If you know, that's when you go say, okay, so I know I should be doing video. Everyone knows we should be doing more video, right? Video closes more deals. We've got 10x. Like Brandon talked about his process with, the video quote presentations. We just know we innately should be doing it. But what holds us back, right? And so if this is my dominant thought, I know I should do video, but I'm not. Now I wrestle with the idea that, why am I not? Most people stop there. They just say, I know I should be doing video, and then they close it off. But if we go, okay, I know I should be doing more video. Why should I be doing more video? But also, why am I resistant to doing video? And then you start to feed and understand how this dominant thought can become actionable, or that you need to scrap it and move on to the next thought. So I know that just in the thinking process, we're like, who goes that far into the thought process, right? But when we understand these things, your action goes into your loop of confidence. Because when you develop something that works, so let's talk about maybe just the way that you answer your phones. How many times did you have to answer the phone call a certain way before you got comfortable enough to also then tell your team, hey, I want you to answer the phone this way, right? First, it was like, hey, how can I help you? And you're like, oh, that doesn't work. Then you turn around and say, hey, my name is Patrick with Main Street Insurance. How can I help you? Hey, this is Main Street Insurance, right? Whatever it gets to, you worked on it, okay? But once it was successful, you closed the loop for that and you said, this is the process, right? Whether it was your SOP, whether it was telling your team. And so the same thing with sales, this confidence loop, once you have a successful call, once you have a successful campaign, your confidence grows. And we develop these loops on a repeated process, and we scrap the ones that don't work. But the ones that don't work oftentimes hurt us the most because they're memorable. And so you can have 1,000 successful calls where you've closed business and closed deals. You may have a handful of stories. I remember saying this to a client and closed the deal. But the ones that stick out are the ones where like, well, we spent all this time together going everything and it didn't make sense. So then she just got mad and hung up on me and ghosted me. And so now your dominant thought goes back to the piece that didn't work. Okay. So with these confidence loops, you need to write them down. You need to understand what you're a master at. Am I a master at asking open-ended questions? Right. And again, it can be small, it can be large, but if we start with these small ones, what do you do very well? I answer the phone. When people call, it doesn't go to voicemail. That's a loop. Close that, right? Write it down. The more that you have of these skill sets, the more you know and realize I'm capable of creating this next loop. And so if I have a dominant thought, or if I have something that I think that I'm not great at, now you know it's a repeatable process and what steps you have to take to be able to get there. Does that make sense? When it comes to sales, how many people have actually in here taken a legitimate sales course? I know Brandon and Tyler have, because they were working with Jeremy Miner, which is a huge inspiration of mine. Okay, perfect. And so if you have taken a sales course, why aren't you closing more sales? Why isn't your team closing more sales? Okay. And again, that goes back to the loop. You didn't create a confidence loop to tell yourself that you're great at sales and make that a repeatable process for your team. Okay. Now, there's a lot of noise out there. It seems like in the last 3 years, 5 years, the option and people, the openness for sales has exploded, but a lot of it has always been taught off of what? Overcoming objections, selling yourself, right? Which is some of these things help. And then you have Jeremy Miners, which is basically pattern disruption or pattern interruption. Okay. Now, a lot of these things work. And the reason why it works is because people genuinely are willing to give you opportunity. It's in our nature to be able to do so. Has anybody ever taught you that people genuinely want to hear what you have to say? In sales, they tell you absolutely not. They tell you it's a fight. They tell you have to overcome all of these things. Well, I'm going to tell you right now that sales is not logical. And that goes against everything that you've ever learned. And when I say logical, I'm talking that people say that it has to make sense, that you have to have the right price point, all of these things. There is a lot of logic that goes into sales. But what today I'm going to teach you something that goes in the complete opposite direction of basically that sales is chemical. Okay. And so there's a neuropsychology that really kind of goes into sales, that really showcases all the things that you're capable of, that is a repeatable process every single time, assuming that you can get to that process in the phone call and within the allotted time. Okay. First thing that we need to overcome is that you're not in sales, right? And we've talked about this working with lenders. You're a commission saver. You're what we call a neuro architect. Okay. I want you to keep that thought process in mind, that we're not in sales because we're not selling people a product. What we are doing is we're approaching sales with influence through emotional intelligence, neuro persuasion, but above all of those things through authentic human connection. Okay. So we no longer need scripts. We don't have to have fancy words and fancy sayings to get people to think, because everything that we do from here on out is basically human connection. And I think that when you understand that and how to convey that, you give yourself opportunity every single time. Is there anybody here that would maybe argue that or think differently? So as you're going through a lot of these things, when I say that sales is chemical, our brain naturally teaches us to be afraid of stranger danger. Okay. If I'm in a grocery store and I hear somebody behind me just yell across the thing, right? Naturally, what happens? We turn around and we look. My name is not Barbara, but if he's yelling at Barbara very aggressively, I'm going to look to see who's calling for Barbara, right? So naturally, our minds are also curious. But what happens if somebody is walking and they've been walking too closely behind you for so long? Your brain alerts you. Oh my gosh, they're following me, right? So our brain is designed to protect us. And when that happens, we release something that's called, hold on. Not dopamine. Sorry, I'm thinking of the chemical that is the opposite of oxytocin. But it basically puts your defense mechanisms up, right? It also makes you like super scared. It puts you in the fight or flight mode. Okay. Now, oxytocin, on the other hand, is the complete opposite. It releases chemicals into your brain and makes you more relaxed. It makes you feel like it's, that you're in a good environment, in a good setting. Okay. So in order to give yourself opportunities for sales, you're going to have to learn how to get complete dialogue and to basically start to formulate trust. Okay. So when you understand basic principles of humanism, and then you understand the emotional intelligence of how to get there, it now becomes a repeatable process. Okay. So primal fear, right? Cortisol, sorry, that's the one that I was looking for. Cortisol is the stress increaser. Okay. So right off the bat, if you understand that the goal is to release oxytocin and not release cortisol, automatically you already know what you have to do on every single phone call. Okay. On every single opportunity that you meet somebody or shake hands with somebody, you have to do that. Okay. Now, sales is also a very emotional state. And so really a good portion of sales is transference of energy. If you come in and you are not excited, if you come in and you're low tone, okay, I have a monotone voice. I get that. And so it's really hard for me to elevate with other people, but they can see and hear your smile when you're talking on the phone. Okay. If you can probably assume somebody who's a hand talker. So if you start talking with your hands, right, those things do translate. But the first thing that we do when we get into a sales piece beyond our introduction is what we call an emotional temperature check. And this is basically one of two things, really. They're open or they're not. And those that are open, we call that warm. There's different variations of warm, right? And then, of course, if they're cautious or defensive, we call that cool. Now, again, different levels of cool, because somebody may be really defensive, but may have a lot of questions. Somebody else could be warm and open, but be very closed off to say, yeah, I'd be interested. What information do you need, right? Almost like they're going to keep some of these things secret. You don't need to know what I'm paying, right? So what this emotional state does is this first just teaches you, is this somebody who's going to be engaged? Is this somebody who's looking for just observation? Or is this completely low energy, low transference that maybe I don't even want to waste my time here? Okay. But let's talk about openers first. Before you even get to this temperature check, you have to get beyond them hanging up, right? And so, first of all, when we do call, we introduce with our first and last name. Okay. You get to the point, and the reason being is because you want to instill trust. How many of you ever called Verizon or T-Mobile, and the person that you're speaking with, his name is John, but his name is probably something like Suckbinder, or right? Like, you just know that his real name is probably not John. And that's okay, because I understand you want to protect them, and the company wants to protect them. But there is something different when somebody says, yeah, my name is John Smith. Here's my agent ID, but here's also my extension, right? They put their stamp on themselves. And so when you call and you put your first name out there, you're telling them, I'm real. Go find me. Google me if you have to, right? Because I want you to know who I am. But when you get that phone call, what does traditional opportunity sounds like for most people in our industry? Hi, this is Patrick from Main Street Insurance. I was actually calling to see if I could speak to the business owner. I was wondering if I could speak to the decision maker for insurance. Okay. When was the last time that you guys actually shopped around your insurance? That's how most sales calls go. And there's nothing wrong because they're dialing, right? But you're going to get a lot of hangups. Oh, no, we're good. I'm not interested in what you're selling. No, we just did our insurance, blah, blah, blah. But if you turn around and say, hey, my name is Patrick Murakami calling from Main Street Insurance, I'm not sure if you're the right person to speak with. Now, what happens is that's a pattern disruption. And what happens is now people turn around and they want to be helpful. So they're going to turn around and say, well, how do you know I'm not the right person to speak with? Right? In their mind, that's where they go. And so they turn around and then you say, so I'm actually looking to speak with somebody who I can discuss insurance with, not because I'm trying to make a sale, but because I want to show you what recently some of your neighbors in your zip code are going through. And now all of a sudden, that person who was trained to bypass, trained to get you off the phone, to train to say, we don't want these things, says, well, I'm not the right person to speak with. You need to speak with Tim. Great. I'd be happy to speak with Tim. Is he available to speak with today? Well, Tim's actually out of the office for holidays. He won't be back until January 1st. Hey, thank you so much for that information. Can I get your name? Right? Because you know that she's going to ask to take a message or whatever. But if I beat her to it, she already knows mine. Great. Can I get your name? Oh, yeah. My name is Patrick Murakami. If you didn't get that, here's how you spell it. Can I get your last name also, just so that way I have it for my results? Right? And she's in, a lot of people get really hesitant. Some people just give it. Some people turn around and say, no, I'm not comfortable. They'll say, okay, great. That's fine. But the reason being is that it's a memorable point in conversation. When we have that memorable point in conversation, they're going to remember me when I call back in 2 weeks or a week after Christmas, New Year's, whenever Tim comes back. I will tell you guys right now that this is actually the most successful sales call you're going to have, is if you do have breakthrough with that secretary or the person designed to answer the phones, more so than if you get Tim on the phone now. And the reason being is because you now have an ally. Because let's say Samantha, right, was her name, and I turned around and said, hey, Samantha, thank you so much for your time today. Can I leave some detailed information for you to jot down? But also, I will follow up with you in a couple of weeks to see when a good time is to speak with Tim. In her mind now, I'm not just a name. I'm not just a person. Yeah, she takes these notes all day long, but I've just told her I'm going to make her job easier. I will follow up with you. So if you don't get it right, that's okay. Okay. Has anybody ever heard this terminology where it says teach somebody what they know? Okay. When you teach somebody what they know, they're more inclined to come with you because they believe you understand their pain points. How many of you have been scrolling through Facebook and seen an ad that says, hey, we know that insurance agents struggle to convert more business. Click here into my video and I'm going to give you the top 3 strategies that teach you how to close business. And then you click into it and you listen to the video and it's 3 things, but you already knew 2 of those 3. And then even you might have known all 3. And then guess what? You're like, yeah, I guess I could be doing more of that. And then they turn around and say, okay, so hey, if you click into my email, you'll get more updates like this. Cool, let me subscribe to my email. And then before you leave that page, then what happens? You go and all of a sudden you have an offer that's normally $1,000, but it's on sale for $250. But if you get that and now you qualify for this in the next 10 minutes, right? It's called a funnel. Nobody creates a sales funnel based off of information of what you don't already know. They create the funnel based off of what you already know to build authority. And so when you tell these people, these potential clients, and you sell off of what they already know, hey, I know you mentioned that Tim won't be here and I'm sure you're going to be busy. So I'll give you my information, but I will be the one to give you a call back. You've already said you're going to take that off of her plate and you already understand her pain point. At that point, now she becomes an ally. So when you do call back in 2 weeks, she's going to tell Tim, hey, Tim, I have that insurance guy that I was telling you about. And Tim's going to be like, what the hell? I don't take these phone calls. You're supposed to be weeding these out. But if it was good enough to go past her, now it's good enough for him to take that phone call. Okay. Simple psychology pieces are going to go a long way. We have a tendency to overcomplicate. Okay. So when we use strategic pieces like vulnerability, when we use social proofing in our phone calls, one of the new pattern interruptions that we've been using is we just tell people, hey, I know that you don't like to take these phone calls. Please give me 30 seconds. If it doesn't resonate with you, you can hang up and get back to what you're doing. People turn around and say, what is it that you have? They turn around and say, because I've acknowledged the pain point. I know you don't like to take these phone calls. Nobody likes a cold call. But if you give me 30 seconds, you can determine if you hang up on me or not. That breaks through barriers because you've already taught them that you already know their pain point. So what else are you an expert in? Okay. When we talk about social proofing, right? A lot of time that's basically just saying, hey, we recently served a client in your zip code. Would you be open to discussing how we could potentially help you? Okay. If we could reduce your insurance costs by 25% by spending 15 minutes on the phone, would you be open to that? Okay. You're literally talking about what you've already done for somebody else that they may potentially know. So the pattern interruptions, right? These are things where you're not going straight for the sale, right? And I equivalent this like if you go to the bar or you go to the club, right? And let's say I was a single guy and I walked up to a girl and I just put my arm around her and I started talking to her. I'm going to come off as a creep, right? But if I walk up at a 45-degree angle, maybe we bump shoulders. Oh, I'm so sorry. Hey, what are you doing here? Who are you here with? Can I buy you a drink? Blah, blah, blah. Conversation becomes and sounds more natural. Okay. Sales needs to be the same way. You have to massage your way into it. You can't just go into asking for a sale, right? So asking and going into that is being the creep for sales. Okay? You have to find relatability. You have to basically pattern interrupt because everybody's used to saying and hearing the same exact thing. Okay. So thank you for, hi, my name is Patrick Murakami calling from Main Street Insurance. I'm actually not here to sell you anything. In fact, I might talk you out of some bad marketing ideas. Immediately, when you say, I'm not selling something, you get one of two things. Some people truly believe that. Some people turn around and say, no, this is just another marketing ploy, but it is different, right? And then we also want to introduce something that we call permission-based questioning. Okay. This also interrupts. And when we say permission-based questioning, it's something like, hey, can I ask you a question about your business? Can I ask you a question about your current process? If I were to go ahead or if we were able to go to the next step and I can show you what that looks like, would you be open? Right? What you're doing is you're basically asking them permission to go to that next level. And when you ask for permission, people want to hear more because you've asked them, you didn't force it upon them. Okay. And then this other piece that's here, this relatable vulnerability. Hey, honestly, reaching out feels a bit weird to me, but your brand really caught my attention and I've had an idea. Would you be willing to give me 30 seconds to explain that to you? Okay. If we were to go ahead and execute this, this is kind of what that would look like. Are you okay with me sharing you with that, what that looks like? Right? Can I take another 2 minutes of your time to show you what that looks like? Now, I've already gotten their buy-in because they've said yes. They continue to say yes. Okay. So what you're really doing is you're identifying the situation, making sure if is it cold, is it warm? That alone can kind of help you gauge. One, do you have to ask better questions? Do you have to pattern interrupt a little bit more? It also gives you awareness, right? And a lot of times the awareness is if somebody's cold, I'm not moving into that permissions phase for a little while because I have to open up dialogue. I have to get them to respond. If somebody's warm and they're talking and they just give you everything, it's so much easier to go into that permission phase because they're pretty much already discussing it with you. Okay. Solution desire, this is something that you probably all know, which is basically meeting the client's needs, but we actually have to understand what their unrealized needs are. And the idea of how do we get that is we get into that deep dive of asking open-ended questions. Tyler, thanks so much for sharing your insurance information with me. I know that's frustrating with everything. I know the market's been tough. I too, I'm kind of tired of it. But outside of the price, what else has really been a hindrance for you in regards to this? Well, my agent didn't even call me to let me know about any of these things. Agent used to call me all the time and haven't heard from them, and now when I call, it takes them 2 to 3 days to get back to me. This last one, it took like 2 weeks and I'm just not getting the answers that I need. It wasn't just about price, right? At that point, his service level sucked. The delivery of maybe what his agent promised him wasn't there, and then they just ignored him altogether. So you have to figure out what are these potential problems and solutions that you know that you can provide. Now, the human tendency in us, especially if you're what we call a fixer, is that you want to go and respond to that. You want to go and say, well, my agency, we have a servicing team, so we definitely, you don't have to worry about that with us, right? And then you start selling a service and or a solution versus an actual service of what you do. And your service is basically everything that you do, not just one aspect, okay? But you're going to hold on to this because we have something that's called an echo back. An echo back is using the exact terminology that a client says to you. So if somebody says, hey, I'm looking to get a homeowner's quote, and you come back and say, yeah, I can get you a property quote, there's a disconnect automatically because you're not using the same words that they use. Okay. The consequence of inaction, you guys have probably heard the saying that a confused mind leads to no action, which is an action in itself. Okay. So you have to be very clear with your client on what it is that you're going to do. If somebody says, hey, I'd like to get a homeowner's quote, thank you for reaching out, and you start going and discussing and talking about a bundle, you've lost that. There is a time and place, but again, we have to get into that permission phase. So if you turn around and say, great, I'm happy to help you with a homeowner's quote, would there be opportunity or any interest in looking at possibly bundling that, since you did already mention that you wanted to look at reducing cost? Here's some other things that are possible. And again, I go into that permission base, and if they say, yes, I didn't know you could bundle, I didn't know that. Oh, you do home or auto insurance as well. Perfect. Well, I also have life, blah, blah, blah. But again, if you just go straight into, great, we can go ahead and run a bundle for you, try to maximize saving you money. You did not hear the client and you didn't get permission. Okay. Does that make sense so far? Okay. And then the next phase is that you have to get into their mind's eye to realize that the client does want to work with you. Okay. This is where the permission comes in. This is where moving them from what we call an I conversation into a we conversation. Tyler, thank you for explaining your process with everything that's happened. I understand how agents maybe get busy, but I've never understood why they get too busy to forget about their client. So what are your thoughts on us quoting your home? But also, would there be any interest in you looking at maybe bundling the auto insurance, since you did mention that the price was pretty high? And what that would look like is that I would just gather all the details here at the same exact time. And honestly, I would have that quote to you by end of day today. How does that sound? What I've done is I basically walked him through the process of how easy it's going to be, but also now he understands step by step, it's not just home insurance. And it's not just home insurance because he initially told me about the price. And so now I leverage to say, hey, your concern initially was about price, but I also heard your pain point about not getting the service that you want. So I basically summarized everything for him, taught him everything that he already knows. And now I have a detailed layout plan, but in his mind, we're going to be working together because I'm solving all of those problems at the same exact time. When you create this shared vision, or when you appeal to that mind's eye that you guys are going to be working together, you're shifting from I know what you're going through to this is how we fix it, right? It goes from that I to we conversation. It goes into an us and a together, right? And it shifts all of these things. And so even simple things like, hey, as we map this out, as we look to do more, or as we follow up on this, right? What you're really doing is you're creating a collaborative effort, but the client feels that. And again, when they in their mind can go from it's me versus you to it's us together, that cortisol versus that oxytocin shift changes drastically, because they're not going to move into that we phase unless they trust you. Okay. Once you've moved into the we phase, there's less friction. Okay. You're going to see that there's maybe less questions, or that they might start allowing you to lead the conversation. They're going to tune in and say, what does that mean? What is that? I've never heard that terminology. I've never heard of that coverage, right? But you're also now going to figure out not just what is the root, but what's the root cause of their curiosity. Can you repeat that? I don't know if I've ever heard of that coverage before. Okay. Once you've gone through these friction pieces and really they've also probably never asked these questions because they've never cared before, they're going to walk away from these conversations and be like, this is the best agent I've ever had. I've never been educated on that before. I've never known what the process looks like. I've never had somebody explain the way that they explained. And a lot of times we didn't do much different. We just presented it better. We just understood what their needs were. You could turn around and you could be the most knowledgeable agent, not have a process, and go through line by line, and somebody will feel like you did not get them. Or you could appeal to the human inside of them, the real emotional aspect of them, and they feel like that you do get them, even if you'd never explained anything about insurance. And this is how sales becomes so much easier, because the process to understand people is the pathway of how then you appeal to figure out what their needs are. Okay. So this last slide, this is really just like if you wanted to become a master at it, you got to start somewhere. And I think that if you change your parameters to say, look, I'll hang up somebody who doesn't even give me the opportunity beyond my opener, to me, that's not a lost sale. That's not an opportunity. So therefore, I can't count that. A lost opportunity would be, hey, I got through the opener. I got them to hear my conversation. We went through, we even got, got to the point of moving from an I to a we, but then they just did not want to pull the trigger. They did not want to give me their information. They weren't open to a quote. They just needed somebody to talk to. Okay. In some ways, I would still consider that a win. But if it did not convert to opportunity for sales, then at that point, I would chalk that up to say, okay, yes, that one did not work. But you at least know and can go back to say, I could have echoed back here. I could have actually used this. I could have done more pattern interrupt. I could have asked more open-ended questions. I should have acknowledged this. And when you go from saying, well, somebody hung up on me, so therefore that's a lost opportunity. No, you didn't get far enough to understand, because when you got far enough in the first example, you have feedback to draw from, which also means that you now know the next time that you accomplish that or go through that of how to get there. And then sales becomes so much easier. It's that repeatable process that you're creating. It's never perfect. Every single person is like a puzzle that you have to unlock. But that's actually becomes the more fun piece about sales. That becomes the piece that you're like, you know what? That was actually a challenge at first because they were so cold. This person wanted nothing to do with me. But you know what? I turned around and turns out that we needed each other more so than what we knew, because as soon as I got that, I got her home, I got her auto, I got her three businesses, I got her daughter, I got her mom. Oh yeah, and then we have a follow-up conversation for life insurance next week. Right? When you accomplish that, when you know that you did that, the confidence increases, right? I tell people all the time, I was the meme guy on social media. I tried to get it off. My wife was like, you have to keep your profile. She goes, people were asking me what was wrong with you. People were asking me what was wrong with us. Some guy asked me on a date because he thought I was single suddenly. She was like, you have to stay on Facebook. I did not want to be on Facebook. I literally was just posting memes all the time. My attitude has changed. And it changes when you wake up to people saying, hey, can I get an insurance quote? Hey, I need you to call my mom. Hey, what does it cost to work with you? How much would it cost to install this? Hey, I've seen all of your growth. It's so amazing to see. Trust me, my attitude towards social media has changed because I closed business from it. Okay. And so a lot of your thought processes of what you think about sales will change when you start to experience more opportunities, more growth. But the awesome part about sales, and I will die on this hill, and the cool part about sales is that you always have opportunity if you know how to talk to somebody, whether it's in person, whether it's over the phone, whether it's standing in line at Disneyland or Disney World, which, yes, I have closed business standing in line waiting to go ride the Slinky the dog. Talking to strangers at a Vegas pool, right? Going to a local casino and watching our kids play, in the pool. Like, you always have opportunity to basically create a sale somewhere. And so it's a skill set, but it's literally just that emotional human connection. And if you can practice and work on that, I promise your attitude towards sales is going to change so drastically. You're also going to be like, I can't shut it off. But it's such a great feeling and a confidence piece rather than the imposter syndrome to turn around and say, I feel like I can scale anybody's business, or that I can help anybody sell anything because I understand the confidence piece. I understand. I don't need to know all the details about your business. I just need to know that I'm talking to the right person. And when you can introduce those things for you personally. It makes a world of difference, but also you close more business, you get more opportunities, you get people to remember you. If they need to think on it, that's fine. We don't have to pressure them. We just use more NEPQ on the follow-ups. Last year, we did one email template from Jeremy and his team, and through Facebook Messenger and email, we closed 150 more deals because of one single template. So understanding the human connection is sales, that transference of energy. And so when you can apply these things, I promise you, your attitude towards sales changes drastically.
Would you be willing to share that email template, or is that something proprietary to your agent?
No, I'll send it to you. It's really simple. So most of the time, your emails, or at some point, you probably sent an email that goes like this. Hey, Cassie, wanted to follow up from our conversation from last week. Really enjoyed getting to know you, but wanted to let you know that if you have any questions, I'm available. Everybody sends that freaking email template. Okay.
Yeah.
How many of you have ever casually, just randomly decided to, hey, I'm just following up with you? That's keyword for I need this sale, right?
Yep.
It's a good fit for me. And so everybody knows that nobody just casually follows up. Okay. You also turn around and you kind of like make yourself a puppy dog. Hey, I'm following up with you because it's so important for me to try and get this sale.
Yeah.
So now we say, hey, thinking about our conversation from last week, you had requested for us to send the quotes via email, which we've done. Please let me know what times work best for you so I can cross-reference with my calendar to make sure that we're available.
Yep. ...
Where do we go from here?
Mm-hmm.
Now, what happens in their mind is that of what we call law of reciprocity. And the law of reciprocity, a lot of different ways to understand that. One is give more than what you take. For some people, it's I owe you one, right? And so what you're doing is you're creating psychologically the mentality that you've done your part, now you're waiting on them. And so what happens is people hate that feeling of I owe you. And so if they owe you, they either pay it back or they run away from you as far as possible. Mm-hmm. And if you turn around and remind them, hey, you asked for this, right? Technically, they called me for an insurance quote. Why are they the ones to ghost me when they asked me to do all this? So I just gently remind them, hey, per our conversation, you asked me to email this, which I've done, right? So I did my part. So we're either never going to hear from them ever again, or they respond really quickly. And a lot of times it's within minutes, within seconds. I've had one that was 25 seconds and ghosted me for like 3 messages, 3-week period. We sent that revised template, 30 seconds. I'm so sorry. I've been meaning to get back to you, right? I'll upload those documents, blah, blah, blah. But it's literally just that simple of telling them. It's not, hey, I'm sniffing out and following you as a lost puppy dog to get the sale. I've done my part. Now you decide. And when we tell people that, and we turn around and we also take ourselves off the table, right? There's something about FOMO. So if I say, I need to cross-reference your calendar to make sure it's good with mine to see if I'm available, now there's a sense of urgency. Oh, crap. I may not be able to speak with him before the renewal, and I may not be able to speak with him before I need to get this done. Hey, are you available today? Are you available tomorrow? What does your calendar look like? And so by removing myself from the situation to say I may not be available for you, now all of a sudden it creates a sense of urgency. And I don't have to say, hey, your renewal is coming up in 3 days. No, I just may not be available for you within that next 3-day period. Now it's up to you to realize that. And so it takes all that pressure of us chasing to say, we've done our part, here you go. And again, that piece of crap, they did deliver on their end. Now I got to respond because now I feel like shit.
Yeah, I did one of Jeremy's trainings probably like 4 years ago.
Yeah. It's incredible, a lot of the thought processes and the things that he's done. Now, Jeremy also studied psychology, which has been really crazy to kind of see and understand a lot of that. But, while I don't have a background in psychology, I do have some training with a gentleman by the name of Paul Ekman. And Paul Ekman basically teaches how to read body language. So if you ever saw that TV show called Lie to Me, basically it's based off of Paul Ekman, and he basically was hired on by FBI, by police to basically come in interviews to determine if somebody was lying. They've had him study, criminals. They've had him study, I think Bill Clinton was a case for him as well, to just kind of help determine if, based off their body language, that they were lying. And so I studied a lot of Paul Ekman's trainings as pastime, just to kind of learn about people in
I've
general.
watched some of his videos and stuff. He's a former FBI profiler, right?
Well, yeah, but he didn't start off that way. He basically just started off as somebody who just studied body language, and then eventually became all of that through all of his works. Yeah.
I got you. Cool.
So I know this is a lot to digest because it's complete opposite for what most people have been taught for sales, or at least very different aspect from the sales, because there's a lot of overlap. A lot of it is emotional intelligence, which I think most people have been, that you've taken some sort of training that talks a lot about that. But I think when it comes to knowing that this is a repeatable process, which you can create your opportunities every time, is something that most people are not told, because they're told you have to push harder. The first no is not a no. It's an invitation for more information, right? The second no is that we're just trained to say no. And then the third is a hard no, right? Like all these trainings that you've gone through that people have talked about, all these different things. But really, when you can challenge some of those things and you have the confidence, I'm not interested in what you're selling. Well, hey, ma'am, I understand where you're coming from, but what is it that you're saying no to? I haven't even had an opportunity to discuss with you the reason for my call. Well, whatever it is that you have, we're not interested. Okay, ma'am, so I understand that, but if I basically had the blueprint to help your business grow, so that way you could have, let's say, a higher salary, and so that your business plans could grow and expand, and you denied it, do you think that you'd kick yourself later knowing that your competition may take advantage of that? Well, yeah. So how much does it cost? Well, ma'am, I'm not selling anything. That's not what I'm selling today. But what I'm telling you is that you could be throwing opportunity down the toilet without even listening, right? So when you have the boldness to also overcome what they say, because what do most people do? Well, I'm not interested in what you're saying. Oh, okay, thanks. Click. Thank you for your time. People don't go to that next level. What is the reason for her defense? Because she gets a lot of these crappy phone calls. So I may follow up the next week if she hangs up on me. Hey, ma'am, my name is Patrick from Main Street Insurance. I know you don't like getting these calls because you've hung up on me before, but give me 10 seconds, and if you want to hang up again, I will never call you back again. You don't think that she's going to turn around and be like, okay, fine. 10 seconds is all that you get. But if she hangs up on me again, that's fine. But at least at this point, I've addressed her pain point because I know that. I didn't have that before. And I've had people turn around and actually use that and say, okay, you got 10 seconds. And then they come back and they're like, man, I'm so glad that you called back a second time. Okay. When it comes to traditional marketing, do you know how many times you have to hear a radio or a TV slogan for it to be memorable for you? Liam's shaking his head. Yeah. Go ahead.
7 to 14 times.
That's 7 to 14 times a week. Okay. How many times has the McDonald's slogan changed? How many of you still hear Justin Timberlake in the ba-da-ba-ba-ba, right? And if you didn't know, that is Justin Timberlake, by the way. But the slogans in all of those things are rebrands, but the McDonald's arch is still there, right? So when it comes to marketing, 45 to 50 times you have to see or hear something repeatedly to remember that brand. Okay. If it's not visual, right? If you're listening to it on a radio station, it's between 50 to 70 times before you'll start to pick it up and remember it, unless you're in search for it. You can do this on Facebook really quickly. You can post about your business And you can scale really quickly because I can post 45 times in a week and get people to see my brand, to see what I'm talking about. Now, is that going to lead to business? Probably not, right? It's kind of going to lead to a lot of people blocking my stuff, hiding my stuff, unfollowing, because all I talk about is business 45 times a week. Okay. But if I sprinkle that in as people get to know me, right? As I share about my history, as I share about my family, as I share about Christmas, as I share about Elf on the Shelf, as I share about all of these things, and then I turn around and sprinkle business on top of it, people feel like that they already know me. People feel like, oh, hey, I saw this one post that you had. Like, tell me a little bit more, right? So as people get to know you more, they think that they know all of these things about you. And then when I do share about business, it's the point of emphasis. It's staying top of mind. Okay. Now, I think Ryan and Brian have been privy to understand this, and this is literally the simplest trick of how to give yourself opportunity through social media, and it works on every single platform. Does not matter if the algorithm has been changed. All you have to do is go to your find a reason to DM somebody. For me, I use birthdays. Message somebody. Hey, happy birthday. I hope it's a great day for you. The minute that they respond back, Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram, turns around and says, oh, these guys are best friends. I'm going to show them more of each other's algorithm or show them more of each other's feeds. Instagram is leaning into this so much that they now, as a new followers, you can click a button that instantly sends a direct message because they know that if you message somebody and they respond back, that you're going to be in their algorithm and they must have followed you for a reason. Okay. Have a reason to connect. Find somebody that's not in your algorithm, right? And that's why birthdays are great, because I don't see everybody that's on there, but I do see who has a birthday every single day. And you send them a direct message. And as soon as you've exchanged direct messages, you can go ahead and post about your business and it will feed to their algorithm. You do not have to be salesy. They just now know that you just now know that they're going to see it. And now you are top of mind, even if they do not comment, like, or share. It's a reminder that you're in insurance. And guess what? If they didn't respond 3 months later, I'm going back to that person like, hey, I know we chatted on your birthday and seeing all the pictures of the kids. How's life going? Oh, life's going good. You know, I'm seeing all the growth for you. Man, I'm seeing your post about insurance. That's awesome. Hey, cool. I'm glad to see that that's working. If you ever want me to shop around, just let me know. Right. But it literally happens all day long. This is how I've grown. Literally my entire business was strictly from Facebook, being in the DMs, posting, not ever having to convert a sales call, not ever having to sell myself, but just being a constant reminder for people that I am in this industry. And then you repeat it in Facebook groups. Then the people that are your clients or your referral partners will start tagging you. They connect you with other people. And it's a simple, quick, and repeatable process. It enhances with NEPQ. It enhances with emotional intelligence. But cold calls, social media growth, it's you can do all of this for zero cost, except your time. And eventually you can scale this and teach your entire team to do that, which then costs you no time. So this has been literally the blueprint to grow a $4 million book of business off of $260 total in 7 years.